welcome to Nitzutzais Haparsha Sparks, Tidbits on the Weekly Torah portion. This week, we read a portion called Terumah. When people study this portion, many of them come away feeling that it gets very technical, but all the details of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the portable sanctuary, the desert, all the utensils there, the vessels, the ark, the table, the altar, and so on, the menorah, and they're very technical, the way the Mishkan was built, the covering and everything. And some people just hope that we can get to the next weekly portion to get away from what they consider to be less than exciting teachings of this portion. So then we go to the next week's portion, and what is it about? Again, the technicalities of the Mishkan's inhabitants, the Kohen, the priest, and the garments that he would wear when he would enter into the Mishkan, into the sanctuary. And if that isn't enough, fast forward 2 weeks, and the entire portion is a repeat of the whole construction of the Mishkan with all of its details. And the week after that is a summary of all of that, and again the details. So what's this about the Mishkan? Why is there so much attention paid to the construction of the Mishkan, and every detail was important? Well, of course, the answer lies in the very way the question is phrased. Every detail is important. When we deal with something that is holy, something that is godly, something that is precious, every detail counts. Take, for example, the human body. Take the brain or the heart or the other vital organs. You can't say, well, what's wrong if just one little defect here or a little defect there? It's only a little detail. And living organism is considered to be in good health when every aspect of it is whole and works in sync with every other aspect. The Mishkan, the sanctuary, was not just a building constructed for the purpose of people coming there to serve God. That, of course, was true. But it's a place that God himself created to be the nerve center of the entire world, just as the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, would be years later when they built it in the days that they were in Israel by King Solomon, later on the Second Temple, in the times of Ezra. These structures, and the Third Temple that will be built imminently with the coming of Mashiach, these structures are nerve centers. They're the brain of the world, where every little cell and every component is crucial for the very transmission of divine energy into this world. The Torah portion, which talks about the contributions that were given to the Mishkan, is sometimes understood in terms of the mitzvah, the commandment to give tzedakah, to give charity. And the very opening verse, after the introductory verse, and God spoke to Moses, saying, reads as follows: "Speak to the children of Israel," and I'm reading it, translating it literally, "and let them take for me a portion or a contribution." It doesn't say, you shall give a truma, an offering, a contribution. It says, you shall take for me. Wouldn't it have been a little bit more smooth for the wording to be, tell them to give me? They're giving it to God. What is the idea of taking it for me? So there are many interpretations of this, but the simplest understanding of this is that when we give something to God, and you give something to tzedakah, which is giving it to God, because God wants us to give it to the poor person, the needy cause, you think you're giving. In truth, you are receiving. There's a famous expression: what the rich person does for the poor cannot compare to what the poor person does for the rich. The recipient does more for the donor than the donor does for the recipient. And that can be understood very simply. When you give something, it's a great mitzvah, but your mitzvah is measured, is limited in terms of what you're giving. What are you giving to this poor man? $1, $10, giving $1,000, $1,000,000 to a cause, it's a finite number. But what the person who receives the donation, the contribution, the offering, what that person is giving you is of infinite value. Because that person is giving you an opportunity, number one, to fulfill a mitzvah, divine command, which is a connection to God who is infinite. Number two, it gives you validation and legitimacy. It justifies your existence. It means that you have a purpose in this world. So when you give, yes, you're giving something of value to the poor person, to the needy recipient, but that's a finite benefit. Person, give him a meal, the next day he's hungry again. Give him another meal, he's hungry the next day. But when you receive something, you're giving something to someone, to the donor, that is forever. A little bit of a different angle, more or less the same concept. The Alshich, one of the great 16th century commentators, says that when you give something to an ordinary person, so you're giving and the other person is receiving. But when you're giving something to an extraordinary person, giving something to God in particular, and God accepts it from you, the honor that is bestowed upon you, the gift that you now have, that you have been able to give something to someone so important, and he took it from you, he accepted it from you, that is the greatest gift that you are receiving now, that God is willing to take our donation from us. As the Torah says, God says, Li ha-kesef, Li ha-zav, I own the silver, I own the gold. You're not giving me anything. It's all mine anyhow. So God could say, what are you giving me? What's the point? And when God says, no, you are giving me, even though it's all mine, I am excited, not only appreciative, but excited that you are giving this to me. That is the greatest gift that the giver can possibly receive. That's someone important. There's a law in the laws of marriage that in order to effect marriage legally, the man has to give an article of value, most customs is to give a ring, to the wife. The wife does not give it to the husband. But the Talmud says, well, what happens if the husband is a very distinguished person, and she, the wife, gives something to him, and he's willing to accept it, it's done for the purpose of marriage, it's as if he gave her something. The fact that he was willing to accept it, the fact that God is willing to accept something from us, that itself is considered giving. This section, where God says, take from me a offering, comes right after the parsha called Mishpatim, the laws of the Torah, mostly the civil and criminal law. Because Judaism is divided into at least two categories, actually three categories, perhaps even more than three, but the two main categories are the laws that govern our relationship with God, and the laws that govern our relationship with others. So when we read Mishpatim, the focus is on the commandments that involve our relationship with God, but with other people rather. Although there's a smattering of other laws as well, but that's the meaning of the word Mishpatim, judgment, civil law, rational laws. And now we're reading about giving something to God. Lest one would say, I could use stolen goods or goods obtained not so ethically, even if it's not outright theft. But if I use it for something holy and something spiritual, I'm redeeming myself. No, there's no redemption. You cannot fulfill a mitzvah with a transgression. If you steal and you want to use that money for charity, it's not a mitzvah. If you obtain something illegally or unethically, and you try to do a mitzvah with it, you buy some matzah for Passover, that's a problem. It's not really a mitzvah. So the Torah, by juxtaposing the giving of offerings to God with the parsha of Mishpatim, which deals with righteousness, justice, fairness, integrity, honesty, is to tell you that you cannot bribe God. You can't say to God, God, you know what, I did something wrong, but overlook that because I'm giving you the money for charity. God does not take that as a bribe. Now, to focus on that first verse a little bit more, Torah says, "V'yichlu li terumah." They shall take li, for me, an offering. Why doesn't it just say, and they shall take an offering? Why the word li for me? So Rashi says that the word li means lishmi. It has to be in my name. It's not enough to give the contribution. You have to have God in mind. That you're giving it for God's sake. And the question could be asked, when you know that when a person gives money or any other assistance to a needy person, your intention is not important. What you have in mind is insignificant compared to the fact that you're actually helping that person. It's much better to help someone for the wrong reason than to withhold assistance from someone for the right reason. That I'm not ready, I don't really feel like it, I'm not into it, my heart is not into it, I'm not really doing it because of kindness, I'm not doing it because of a sense of responsibility and obligation. So I shouldn't really do it. No. When you're helping someone, what's important is the help. Your intention does not count. Yes, it counts for your own edification, your own refinement, but not for the mitzvah. The mitzvah requires the action, not the feeling, not the intent. So why over here is the intent so important and emphasized that you should give it li, l'shmi, in my name, God says. Not just give it, but give it in my sake. So the answer given is that the Mishkan, construction of this sanctuary, was a response, even though it's not written in that order, but it's a response to the sin of the golden calf. When the Jews worshipped the golden calf, God was angry at them, and withdrew from them, and threatened to annihilate them until Moses pleaded for them. And how did we know that God had given us a reprieve and had forgiven us? When he gave Moses the second tablets, and he comes down on Yom Kippur, and right after that, according to many sources, this is the sequence of events, Moses reports God's commandment to build a sanctuary and to collect all the resources for the sanctuary. In other words, the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary in the desert, was God's way of saying, I'm back amongst you. I'm willing to live with you. Even though I was angry before and I separated from you, I'm willing to come back to you. So the Mishkan is an atonement for the golden calf. Now the golden calf was an act of idol worship. We're told, the Talmud says, that God does not punish people for thought. If someone has a bad thought, whether it's a thought of harming someone or any other negative thought to commit any transgression, God does not hold a Jew accountable for those thoughts, just for the action, with one notable exception: idolatry, idol worship. If you think of worshiping an idol, that is already punishable. Your intent, in and of itself, is a crime. Not only the act of worshiping the idol. So worshiping the idol without intent is a crime, and intent without worshiping is a crime. When you do both, it's a double crime. Since they had to atone for the egel, for the golden calf debacle, which was a form of idolatry, in which there was both action, they worshipped it, and also intent. They desired, as they said in their own words, another Moses to take his place, because they thought he was God, but then it also degenerated into another God. The intent was there and the act was there. So now they had to atone for it by both action and intent. The action is contributing their resources, their gold, silver, and copper for the Mishkan, and the intent was it has to be Lishmi, with my name in mind. They have to think that they're giving it for God's sake. There are 13 items that are listed here. And it's important to point out that in Judaism, the number 13 appears in many different places, and they're all positive. First of all, 13 items with which the Mishkan, the sanctuary, was built. That means the holiest place on earth was a composite of 13. Number 2, I'm going to read this in the parsha following the next parsha, when God allows the Jews to atone for the golden calf. God tells them the secret. How do you invoke God's mercy? He uses 13 expressions, known as the Gimel Midot HaRachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. That means that while God's sense of judgment says you're guilty and there's nothing I can do about it, God overrides that with his infinite mercy that represents an aspect of God's energy and light that transcends all norms and all conventions and all limitations. And that's indicated by the number 13. Of course, we know that there are also 13 methods of Torah interpretation. Some people recite those 13 every single day. So we have a lot of very positive 13s. And of course, the age of Bar Mitzvah is 13. For a girl, it's 12. That means she's entering into her 13th year. For the boy, it's when he completes the 13th year. One could suggest that just like it takes 13 items to construct the sanctuary, we too create our own sanctuary, because it says a little bit later in verse 8, make for me a sanctuary so that I will dwell among them. And this question is asked. It should have said, I will dwell in it. It's only one sanctuary. The answer is them refers to each and every one of us. Each and every Jew, God says, I will dwell in you if you make me a sanctuary within your own heart, within your own soul, within your own body. Well, just like the sanctuary, the physical one in the desert, required 13 items, our own sanctuary that we would create at the age of Bar Mitzvah, at the age of 13, involves contributions of 13 years. Every one of those 13 years contributes to, fashions the sanctuary that is a Jewish soul at the age of 13. Whatever stage in your development, even a little baby, even a one-day-old baby, does things, or we do things with him or her, their presence, that contributes to their sanctuary status. What does a one-day-old, or a month-old, or a year-old baby do? It's not so much what it does, but what we do to it. The influences that it is exposed to, the things that it hears, the words of Torah that are spoken in its midst, the music, the spiritual and holy music that is played, the pictures that it sees, the pictures of pure things, of holy things, not grotesque things. All of these things, the Rebbe would say, have tremendous influence on the baby. Even the baby is still in his mother's womb, it's influenced by the environment, certainly after it's born. And every year contributes something else to that sanctuary. The three primary resources that went into the construction that are listed in verse 3 are Zahav, Kesef, and Nechoshes, gold, silver, and copper. These three are said to relate to the three classes of Jews. There's the golden Jew, the tzaddik. Tzaddik is pure, holy, flawless. This is the way, the true definition of the word tzaddik, which we translate as righteous, and it could refer to basically good people, but the Tanya says the true meaning of the word tzaddik, the essential meaning, the ultimate meaning, is someone who is completely rid of every vestige of evil within him or her. That's the golden person. Kesef is the Beinoni, the intermediate, someone who struggles because they still have a lot of internal evil and negativity, and they struggle with it and they prevail. Every time they win their battles. The war is never over, but the battles they win every day, which according to the Alter Rebbe, the First Chabad Rebbe in his classic work, the Tanya, this is the ultimate human being for which God really created us to be involved in that struggle. In doing so, we refine ourselves and we refine the world. We create the sanctuary in this world. That's the kesef, that's the silver person, the intermediate level. The copper represents the lowest class, the Jew who is a Rasha, who is less than righteous, to put it mildly, but who has the opportunity to transform that by doing tshuva, by repenting. The word nechoshes, which is copper, has the root of the word nachash, which is serpent. And of course, that symbolizes evil and negativity. But the same word nachash, when it comes into the Mishkan, into the sanctuary, is transformed. That's the ultimate goal, where the person who is far from goodness and holiness and godliness, transform it. And to reinforce this idea, the word nachash, the root of the word nechoshes, copper, has numerical value, the gematria of Mashiach. That means the Mashiach's role is to take the lowliest aspects of this world and to transform it into holiness. Now, I mentioned before that the Torah says we shall make a sanctuary. Okay, that's a commandment. Jews are obligated, as Maimonides writes, to build the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. But right now we can't build it for whatever reason, and that's a separate subject. Why we can't build it, besides the political situation. Mashiach will be the one to build it, the Rambam says. But we have this obligation. So how do we fulfill it today when, for whatever reasons, for all practical purposes, we cannot physically build the Beit HaMikdash on the Temple Mount where it belongs? How do we fulfill this obligation? So, of course, I mentioned before, the spiritual idea, we create a sanctuary in ourselves, but a spiritual way of doing a mitzvah is not the ultimate way of doing it. The ultimate way of doing it is doing it physically. So one way of fulfilling this mitzvah, the Rebbe, citing a midrashic source, is by studying the laws of the construction of the Mikdash, the Holy Temple, or the sanctuary in the desert. When we read these verses and we study them and we interpret them and we get into the understanding of the process of construction, the study of the temple and its construction is in of itself a form of fulfilling the mitzvah of constructing it. God told the prophet Ezekiel, Yechezkel, who lived right after the destruction of the first temple, before the building of the second temple, he was given instructions for the next temple. And he was complaining to God, we're in exile, what's going on? Why are we talking about the temple? And God says, by learning about it, it's as if you're building it. Just because you're in exile doesn't exempt you from building the temple. You build it now by learning its laws. The Zohar says that you fulfill this mitzvah by constructing a synagogue, a sanctuary, a portable sanctuary. So we have other ways, provisional ways of doing this mitzvah until such time, which we pray for and hope for is imminent, that we will be building the third Beis HaMikdash. One other insight on the Ark. The Ark was the most important part of the Mishkan. The Ark contained the tablets, and the dimensions of the Ark are given. They were 2.5 cubits by 1.5 by 1.5. What's this thing about half? Why is there a focus on 2.5 and 1.5 and 1.5? Why is there a focus on the half? So there are several explanations given. One explanation is the Aron symbolizes the Torah. You have the tablets in it. According to one opinion, it also had a Torah scroll inside of it. The other opinion says the Torah scroll was right alongside of it. So the Ark represents Torah. But which part of Torah? The written Torah. The written Torah is only 1/2. We cannot just read and live by the written Torah, because the written Torah was deliberately written in a way that you cannot fully comprehend it without the oral Torah. So that's one reason why it's only half, to tell you that whatever we have in the written form is only 1/2 of what is really the entire Torah. Another thing is a little bit more of a lesson to all of us, that no matter how much Torah we study, we always realize that we're never capable of mastering it all. Now, it's just interesting that if you open up any volume of the Talmud, it starts with page 2. And I believe it was with Levi Yitzchak of Raditchev who commented that's to tell us. The simple reason is that the title page is page 1. But he said it's to tell us that no matter how much you learn, you realize you have not even begun. You didn't even do page 1. That means as much as we can learn, there's always more to learn. There's no such thing as mastering all of it because Torah is infinite. And the third explanation, when we learn Torah, we have someone who teaches it to us. The teacher has all the knowledge the student does not have. So we understand that the student needs a teacher. Sometimes we don't understand that. Sometimes the student thinks that I can do it on my own. Just go to the library, take out a book, and read it on my own. Judaism does not accept that. You cannot learn Torah by yourself without having the foundation given by a teacher, because there's more to Torah than just the words and even the translation. There's also the flavor, there's the nuance, there's the spirit, there's the between the lines that can only be transmitted orally by way of the teacher. So the teacher gives the student, and the student realizes he is only half without the teacher. But conversely, the teacher realizes that he is only half without the student. As the Talmud says, as one great sage commented, I learned so much from my teachers. I learned much more from my colleagues. But from my students, I learned more than from anyone else. The teacher needs the student for his own edification, for his own understanding. And therefore, the aura, the symbol of learning, was constructed in ways that emphasized and highlighted that it was a half, whether it's written Torah versus oral Torah, whether it's the fact that we've never really mastered all of it, or that the teacher and the students have this relationship that each one depends on the other. We always recognize that we are only in possession of one half. Good evening. Today is Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month of Adar, so we should have a joyous month, and of course, a good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.